Some cases, they really get under your skin and they just never let go. And this deep dive, well, this is about one of those cases, the JonBenét Ramsey case. You guys specifically asked for this one, and honestly, it's a story it's stuck with me too.
It really is one of those cases that just defies easy answers, even
Mhm.
after all this time, 27 years.
Yeah, you're right. So we're going to do our best to untangle things, really dig into the details here. But with a bit of a twist, you guys already know the basics, right? 6-year-old JonBenét found dead Christmas Day, 1996, in her home in Boulder, Colorado. And then, the media just exploded. It was huge. Even more so because JonBenét had been a child beauty queen.
And well, it's part of what makes this case so fascinating, right? I mean, it wasn't just a crime, it was a spectacle. But, behind the headlines and all that, there's this really thick, dense web of evidence and theories and just what ifs. And we're going to try to unpack all of that.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's unpack it. Let's start with, well, the ransom note. 3 pages long, demanding $118,000, which, and this is the chilling part,
Yeah.
matched John Ramsey's bonus. So was that just a coincidence? Something meant to, I don't know, mislead the investigation?
Right.
Or was it a clue? Like, was it someone pointing to someone who had insider knowledge?
I mean, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The ransom note, you could teach a whole course on just that. I mean, the language, how long it is, the handwriting. Forensic linguistics, they were looking for anything. Any slip-up, anything at all that could tell them who wrote it.
And they looked at Patsy Ramsey's handwriting, right, specifically.
They did, yeah. But here's the thing. The thing about handwriting analysis is, well, it's not an exact science. And it gets even trickier when you're dealing with someone who knows they're a suspect. I mean, they might try to change their writing, or maybe their handwriting just inconclusive. They couldn't say for sure it was hers, but they also couldn't rule her out.
Okay, so we've got a mystery wrapped in a riddle. But then,
Yeah.
then it gets even weirder because the police are at the house, right?
Yeah.
The ransom note is found, and then John Ramsey, he's the one who finds JonBenét's body in the basement.
And that's where this whole thing takes a really sharp turn. Like, what was even the point of this elaborate kidnapping? If JonBenét was already dead, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit.
It almost feels like, and maybe this is a stretch, but almost like whoever planned this, whoever did this, they wanted her body found.
And that right there, that's the kind of detail that just, I don't know, it just gets you. It's what keeps everyone thinking about this case even now. Because if it wasn't about the ransom, well, then what was it about?
And if all that with the ransom note wasn't strange enough, you start looking at the investigation and how it started out, and, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly by the book.
That might be the understatement of the century. You've got, I mean, friends and family, they're just coming and going from the crime scene. I know, it was 1996, things were different then. Crime scene investigation, it wasn't as strict back then. But even still?
Yeah, today,
Yeah.
it's unthinkable letting people just walk around a potential murder scene. Like, you'd think that alone, that right there would have been enough to mess the whole thing up.
Didn't help, that's for sure.
Yeah.
You've got potential evidence contamination right off the bat. People touching things they shouldn't, moving things. I mean, who knows? Just, adds a whole other level of chaos to something that's already a mess. But, we should probably talk about the DNA. That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah, let's dive into that. The DNA, what they found, it wasn't a match with anyone in the family. So, that kind of clears them, right?
See, that's the thing about DNA. It can be rock solid. You can use it to point the finger or clear someone's name. And in this case, it pointed away from the Ramseys, which at the time, that was huge.
Okay, but then who was it? This mystery person. Did they ever figure out who that DNA belonged to?
Million-dollar question, right? That unknown DNA profile, it became the big focus. And there was that open window in the basement, remember? Some people thought, well, maybe that's how someone got in. An intruder.
Hold on, wait. So you're saying some random person, they just snuck into this house with people in it and did all that, and the only thing they left behind was a little bit of DNA. I don't know about that.
And that's exactly why this whole thing is such a puzzle. It's hard to believe, right? That someone could just, I don't know, waltz in there, do what they did, and disappear. Especially since, well, their house wasn't exactly Fort Knox, no fancy security system or anything like that.
You'd figure there'd be more,
Yeah.
more evidence, signs of a struggle, something, because it doesn't really add up.
And that's what gets everyone going, right? All those inconsistencies, it's what's fueled all the theories all these years. You've got people looking at the family wondering if maybe there was some reason, some motive that's never come out. Some people even thought, well, maybe it was an accident, and then, I don't know, things just got out of hand.
Well, and speaking of theories, there have been some wild ones about this
Yeah.
case. I mean, you've got the Ramseys, right? Then the intruder idea.
Mm.
And then there's, well, you can't forget about that confession from John Mark Carr.
Ah, yes, John Mark Carr, the guy who suddenly pops up years later and says, yep, I did it. And then the DNA comes back. Not even close. Total mismatch. It was bizarre, bizarre twist. Just added to the whole media circus around the whole thing.
Talk about a case that attracts some characters. Dead ends, strange confessions. It's almost like all the media, all the attention, it just made it worse.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And we can't forget Gary Oliva. He was a sex offender, had been convicted, and he was living in, guess where? Boulder. Around the same time, his name's come up. Some people think he could be the source of that DNA.
But again, nothing concrete, right? No proof.
Nothing solid, no. And I think that's the most frustrating part. There are all these little things, these threads, these potential leads, but nothing leads to a real answer. And meanwhile, the media, they just kept pushing, making it harder to see what was real and what was just people talking.
It's like the media. They just, I don't know, they took the whole thing and ran with it.
They did. They really did. And you got to remember, this was what? The 90s, 24/7 news, that was still kind of new then. And cable news especially, they always need something to talk about.
And this case, I mean, you've got money, tragedy, a little girl. It's like it was made for the news.
Exactly. And the thing is, you can't ignore how that affected the investigation, you know? Every little thing that came out, rumors, theories, it was just magnified everywhere you looked.
So it's like, instead of the investigators being able to focus, do their thing, it just became this free-for-all.
Right. It's not hard to see how all that pressure, all those eyes watching, it could mess things up. Witnesses who don't want to talk because then, boom, they're on TV. Leads that go nowhere because of bad information. It's a mess.
It's like a lesson, you know? The JonBenét case. It's like, be careful what you wish for with all this media attention. It can help, but it can also hurt.
Yeah, you gotta find that balance. People should know what's going on, but you can't let it get in the way of finding the truth. And with cases like this, these big ones, that line gets crossed.
Speaking of lines getting crossed, let's talk about, I don't know, the public. Everyone. It's been years, decades, and people still can't get enough of this case. They're still talking about it, writing about it. I mean, have you seen all the documentaries?
It gets in your head, this case. It really does. Part of it, I think, is that there aren't any answers. We as humans, we want things tied up neatly, and when they're not, especially something like this, it leaves this hole.
And we try to fill that hole with, I don't know, theories, guesses. We want to make sense of something that doesn't make sense.
It's what we do, right? We want all the puzzle pieces to fit, even when some of them are missing. And in this case, oh boy, there are a lot of missing pieces.
Yeah, the ransom note, the DNA, no suspect. It's like the perfect recipe for a mystery that never ends.
Exactly. And that's why even now people are looking for those answers. But, there's one thing that, I don't know, it gives me a little hope. Science, technology, all that. DNA, it's come a long way since 1996.
So you're saying there's a chance that what they found, that DNA, it could still lead to someone.
It's possible. New ways of doing things, bigger databases. It's getting harder and harder to, to hide.
Yeah.
And in this case, it might be the only shot. That DNA might be the key to finally figuring it all out.
Wow, that's something. So even after all this time, there's still hope.
There is. And for everyone's sake, JonBenét, her family, everyone who's carried this case with them, I hope so. I hope that day comes.
I think we all do. This whole thing, it's a reminder that some questions, they just stick around. But even when we don't know, even when it's uncertain, there's always a chance. Maybe someday we'll know what happened.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Justice. Even when so much time has passed, it's still important.
Well said. This has been, I don't know about you, but it's been a lot. Fascinating, sad, but it makes you think. Thanks for coming on this journey with me, talking through all this. And to everyone listening, if it's gotten to you, if you're curious, don't let it go. Read about it, ask questions. You never know. Maybe you'll be the one to find the missing piece.